Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome back to a little bit of Total War Warhammer. So I want to talk a little bit about individual units again, because that was a series I started and then immediately stopped doing because Civilization 6 came out, and then it sort of devoured my life and led me to play Europa Universalis, because everyone knows that Civilization is a gateway grand strategy game that leads you down a dark path of twisting netherous things that just sort of consume your life until you're a withered husk of a man, just like a crack cocaine addict, except with less money. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about the Eternal Guard, and we're going to be talking about both varieties because I don't particularly feel like I need to make a video about the one with the shield as compared to the one without the shield. Very, very similar units here. So these guys are the sort of fodder unit for the Wood Elves, if you want to think of anything as being fodder, and they're actually pretty damn good. The Eternal Guard with shields only cost 50 more. They've got 7 additional defense and silver block chance, so they're a really, really solid upgrade for 50 points there. Now, if we do take one of these side by side, we can find out what this is going to look like. If we try and get it about the same cost, we can get it to 503. And you'll notice that we've got 2 more points of leadership, 2 more points of melee attack, and 4 less points of melee defense. So it's pretty much on par with the Eternal Guard with shield, except without the missile block chance. So if you favor a little bit more offense, you could go ahead and choose the regular Eternal Guard and give them 2 chevrons, and they'll be about equivalent to the Eternal Guard with shields without any chevrons. So similar price point, and you can sort of like scale them up at about the same rate, and you'll end up sort of in the same place here. So you can see that now it's like same difference in defense, but 1 more difference in melee attack, and it sort of goes along that way. So keeping these guys about the same points, you'll find out that if you want a little bit more defense, you go with the ones with shields. If you want a little bit more offense, you go with the ones without the shields. And of course, if you need the shield block chance, you go with the ones with the shields. So these guys are a sort of halberd unit, despite the fact that they're listed kind of as spear infantry. If we were to take, for example, the Empire's halberd infantry, we could see that these guys are very, very comparable in terms of what they do. The halberdier here, anti-large with a plus 17 bonus and 19 armor piercing damage. If we were to look at one of these guys, we can see that they have got 20 armor piercing damage, a little bit more, and a little bit less bonus versus large at 15 instead of 17. So very, very similar in that regard. However, they are 150 points cheaper. For that, you're looking at a unit that's actually very, very comparable. Now, the halberdiers do have 930 more hit points, which is a very, very significant amount. Like, if you were to look at these guys, that's pretty much a fifth of their hit points, more than a fifth of their hit points, tacked on as added. And this is, of course, because the halberdiers come in a much larger unit, 90 instead of 75. This does also mean that the superior offensive statistics on the Eternal Guard are a little bit of a lie, because you're going to be swinging more halberds than you are going to be swinging spears with these Eternal Guards. So if you're fully committed, you'll end up getting more attacks from the halberdiers. But you are looking at 10 less armor, no missile block chance, way less leadership, less speed by a tiny bit, pretty similar melee attack and defense, honestly, and a little bit more weapon strength than the halberdier. So very, very comparable unit, but we're looking at a unit that's 150 points cheaper. If we were to boost it up to about the same point cost, we're looking at a unit that is remarkably better than this halberdier unit here. We're looking at 7 more melee attack, 8 more melee defense, 22 more leadership. All of those statistics sort of together makes this a very, very good unit for its price cost, for its points cost. And of course, like the halberdier, though, is a much more situational unit because the Empire does have other units that they can take instead. They can mainline, for example, with the swordsman, a much more generic type of unit. 100 points cheaper, you're looking at a unit that's got, again, fairly comparable statistics. Again, way more hit points, 10 less armor, 20 less morale, more speed for the Eternal Guard, more melee defense for the Eternal Guard, but less melee attack for the Eternal Guard. Weapon strength is pretty comparable if you consider the fact that the Eternal Guard are armor piercing, these guys are not, and less charge bonus on the Eternal Guard. So we can bump these guys up again to about the same price here, then look at the comparison again. We can find that the Eternal Guard still match pretty well in some respects, but their melee attack is much lower. So it's hard to say whether or not you would want the swordsman with the upgrades or you'd want the basic Eternal Guard with shields. It's kind of a toss-up in some respects, but you can definitely see how you would come to the conclusion that swordsmen are just a better deal for infantry versus infantry combat. And then, of course, you've got things like the Sigmar's Sons, who could be compared to them. Much, much stronger than these guys, but they are a regiment of renown, and they've got kind of that unbreakable thing going on. Very, very strong ability. You could compare them as well to things like Bretonnians. Bretonnian Pullmen are a little bit closer in points cost, and you'll notice that, again, the Eternal Guard, less hit points, a little bit less weapon strength, but again, more armor-piercing weapon strength. And again, just fantastically higher statistics, despite the fact that they're a comparable unit. So this is sort of to make up for the fact that they don't have a spear unit, which is, under most circumstances, a superior type of unit, and for much, much cheaper. The men-at-arms, polearms, and the Imperial Halberdiers are very much not universal troops. They're very niche. You only use them to fill in a line in certain situations, whereas a spearman-at-arms with shields can be used almost any time to fill out a line, and they work extremely well for that purpose. What does make these guys a little bit really good, though, is that armor-piercing damage just on a relatively inexpensive chassis. This means that these guys are capable of taking on much, much heavier elite infantry relatively cost-effectively, and fighting them well, or even beating some of them. So, depending on how much you've upgraded these guys, they can put the hurt down on Dwarven units and stuff like that pretty effectively, whereas the Bretonnian Halberdier can, but costs a lot more to do the same results, or even worse results. The only problem is that if you're fighting trash mobs, the Eternal Guard and the Eternal Guard with shields, not necessarily as good as the Spearmen, which is the other sort of comparison point that you would make. If you're fighting against something that doesn't have armor, the higher weapon strength on these guys is sort of better. The fact that you've got a larger unit size matters more against trash mobs like goblins or something like that, or other spearmen at arms, or swordsmen or something like that. All of those sorts of units, I would much rather have something like the swordsman or the spearmen at arms with shields, or spearmen at arms, or anything of that sort of vein. And of course, as well, if you were to compare them to something like what the orcs or the beastmen have, one of the mainline infantry there, you're going to find that these guys, like the Goreherd with shields, are going to be able to do quite a decent amount of damage to something like the Eternal Guard, who focus a lot on those sort of defensive statistics there, that high melee defense, but it doesn't necessarily synergize with their low hit point total, meaning they'd still get killed pretty quickly. Their high leadership, though, does let them stick out a fight, and you can use these guys to hold an enemy in place for a very, very long time. I do think that these guys are one of the better mainline units if you do happen to want to use them, and I do think that they're a very useful part of the Wood Elf roster. So let's go ahead and get into a battle and check them out there. I think that this is one of those units that you're going to start having it sort of grow on you a little bit. They're way better, in my opinion, than the dryads. I find them more versatile in more situations than the treekin, which are your other go-to melee blockers for these guys. The war dancers are kind of trash. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And of course the Wildwood Rangers, while good, are just sort of a very elite, expensive version of the Eternal Guard. Similar sort of statistical type there, but much, much more expensive. So you'll often find yourself considering taking perhaps 2 Eternal Guard, and since they're in the same army, let's take a look at how these guys fill the same sort of niche. So you fully upgrade these guys, you're looking at a unit that's got 20 more melee defense. You're looking at a little bit less hit points, 675 less hit points, looking at a lot more leadership on the fully upgraded Eternal Guard. You're looking at more, a little bit less melee attack on the Eternal Guard. You're looking at a lot less weapon strength. So the Wildwood Rangers, if you need weapon strength, and in particular armor-piercing weapon strength, and charge bonus, the Wildwood Rangers more than make up for the sort of 255 points cost difference. So if you really need to smack down something hardcore, Wildwood Rangers definitely can do that very, very effectively. But of course, if you want to upgrade them, they cost quite a lot more. So if you're trying to, you can make these guys cost quite a bit. But yeah, Eternal Guard fully upgraded, very, very strong contender against Wildwood Rangers in some respects there. That extra melee defense can help them in a fight to a certain degree against even very, very heavy, very elite troops. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into a match and see how these guys perform. Alright, so here we are. We've got ourselves a big old lineup of Eternal Guard with shields. I've given them 2 chevrons. That's a great breaking point because it gives them 2 points of melee defense at level 2 as opposed to the first one, which gives you 1, and every other one, like Silver 2 and I think Gold 2, also give you 2 points instead of 1. So any of those second chevron ones are good stopping points for that, I find. Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts here. We've got 4 of them. We are against Chaos. We've got 2 Wild Riders. We've got ourselves a Waystalker, a Spellslinger with Lord of Shadow, and a Glade Lord. So, again, this isn't necessarily what I would normally take, but I really want to highlight, of course, what the Eternal Guard with Shields can do. Or Eternal Guard. I think that even here against Chaos, where they're not really realistically going to have any missiles, having that extra 7 points of melee defense really does make a difference in my opinion. Or rather, it's actually more like 4 points of melee defense, because if I was using the other ones, I could have afforded more chevrons, just because they're a slightly cheaper unit there. Alright, are you in range, buddy? Looks like it. Alright, so this Marauder Horse Master unit has lost a boatload of health. Good for them. Can I reach them? No. Alright, so I guess we're going to start moving forward a little bit. Let's go ahead and maybe... let's find somewhere better to fire this off at. Let's fire it at their general, I guess. Probably miss again with this. I've been missing a couple of times with this, and I didn't even know that was possible with this particular missile. Alright, opponent coming around the flanks and stuff like that, that's fine. Nope, we got a couple good hits on Archon the Everchosen there. And looks like my opponent has gone for a fairly thin front line there. So we'll go ahead and have these guys set to retreat on when necessary. And looks like my opponent is ready to advance right now. Chaos Warriors up front. So they're going to be quite tough for me to deal damage to with the Starfire arrows, of course, which is perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and aim all of our shots at this unit. Don't want to aim at the Aspiring Champions despite them being a high value target, just because they're kind of more resistant to arrows with their higher missile block chance, so that's not really a great choice there. But yeah, these Chaos Warriors, pretty good choice. Alright, and let's go ahead and lock these guys in place if we can. Go ahead and use Melkoths on these Chaos Warriors, I think. So these guys taking 22% more missile damage from each of these shots here, so they're getting absolutely shredded by this. We're going to have to retreat our archers, though, pretty damn soon. I think maybe one more set of shots there. Actually, I can just let them use their natural retreat. There we go. Alright, so those Chaos Marauders over there. Let's just go ahead and sort of turn to face them. Alright, so let's move these Eternal Guards so they're facing that way. Slow down these Chaos Warriors as well. What have we got over here? Chaos Warhounds? Alright, I'm just going to charge them with these guys. Alrighty. Horseman there, getting shot would be good. Alright, so you can see that our lines have engaged, and we're at a disadvantage here, just because our units are cheaper than Chaos Chosen here, which my opponent has taken. So we are going to have a little bit of issue with that. Let's go ahead and take another unit of Chosen if we can. Chaos Marauders over there. Let's hit these Chosen up with that hit there. Fire at this guy. Our horsemen over here should get shot at. And we should probably be focusing on their general with both of our archers here if possible. Yeah, so you can see that they're breaking through in a couple... Oh, that's our Glade Guard. What the hell were they doing there? Interesting. But either way, you can see that we're doing some pretty good damage to these more elite units, more expensive units. Chaos Knights over there, that's going to be a problem. Let's use Melkoths over there. Alright. Marauder Horsemen over here. I'm going to lock them down so we can potentially retreat with these guys a little bit. Looks like we've broken through those Marauders with our guys here. these guys can sort of converge on this flank here, and these guys as well. We are losing a little bit over here, and that's fine. The Chosen are, of course, a tough nuts crack. But we're doing an okay job otherwise, looks like. Alright, so where is this unit here? Alright, let's use Melkoths against these Chosen again. And got some of our units rallying here. Alright, let's get into the back of these units here, if at all possible. These Knights, Chaos Marauder Horsemasters, actually. Oh yeah, his Knights actually got over here. You're going to get a clean charge against those Chaos Knights, though, so that's pretty good. Alright, let's not fire that off, actually, at those guys. It's probably a little bit dangerous. Alright, fire this at them. Should be able to do some good damage against these Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights are trying to run away from my Wild Riders, so I'm going to use Melkoths against them. A lot of my units are starting to rout here. So while these guys are very good in melee combat, they will not tank out against like something that is much, much better than them. So you do have to be a bit careful about what you're up against there. Alright, we managed to take out his cavalry. Alright, where's my... Huh. I think my hero guy got killed. Or chased off eventually, at least. Alright, let's fire at these aspiring champions. What the hell are you guys doing? Why are you guys walking forward there? Alright, well anyway. Gonna continue using Melkoths here. It's just a very good spell all around, I find. Alright. Opponent seems to have missed that Exalted here for a little while. Oh, this is my Waystalker. There we go. I was wondering where the hell he'd gotten off to. Alright. Let's go ahead and try and kill this Chaos General if we can. Mage is not completely helpless in melee combat, so we can actually deal some damage there. Those Chaos Warriors look like they're out of the fight. And Chaos General, we can pop this potion, that'll help a little bit. Alright. Fire at these Marauders, I guess, or let's finish off these Forsaken if we can. Alright, loads of units over here still. Aspiring Champion, there's one guy left in that unit. See if we can't assassinate him. And it looks like we're going to be able to just barely hold this off. I don't think I've got a horse for this character here. Alright, let's try and use one last Melkoths before we die here. Forsaken over there for them. But, it's really going after my mage, it looks like, but there we go, sort of got this Chaos Lord. Archon the Ever-Chosen, actually. Managing to chase him away, I think. Let's just see if we can pick him off with an arrow, maybe. Alright. Try and finish off Archon with whatever the hell we have. Alright, we'll do this too. Boop. Alright, there we go. Yeah, so probably not the best use of these guys, but they did hold the line pretty well against pretty tough units. So let's go ahead and check this battle out on the replay, and that way we can sort of analyze their contribution a little bit more carefully, but we can see here their general statistics. Some of them did quite poorly, getting 4, 3, 5 kills in some of them, but 83 kills in one unit, 34, 33, 45 against some others there. Wild Riders doing similarly kind of okay. But my opponent there, Chosen, you're just going to expect these guys to do very good. I think they have silver block chance, which is why I wasn't really aiming at them with my missile units. Probably wanted to aim at the Forsaken, but they were kind of hidden back further. So, not necessarily that easy a choice as to what to fire at as far as all these things go. But, yeah, no, this worked out pretty well. Glade Lord managed to get a lot of kills there. Probably quite a few with the bow. Waystalker managing to do a few. Spellsinger did a couple. So, all around, just sort of kills spread across this entire army here, rather than focused on any one thing. My opponent there, on the other hand, very much focused around that elite unit, getting a lot of those kills there. Aspiring Champions did quite a bit, Chaos Warriors did. One of the Chaos Warriors did quite a lot, Archaon did quite a lot, Exalted Hero did quite a lot, but that's because I was using relatively sort of squishy units. But anyway, let's go ahead and watch the replay. Okay, so we're going to watch this battle a little bit more closely and see a little bit more carefully as to what it is that these guys were doing and what sort of made it so that I could win, despite the fact that I had tons and tons of these sort of troops here. So we're not going to bother charging with them. Like, they have got a charge bonus, but it's kind of not worth it. I do like these unit models, though. They look very, very sort of like Lord of the Rings-esque, I would say. Shields being that large for the Azrai is kind of what I think makes it sort of feel that way. So, yeah, Chosen, Chaos Warriors, any of those things are better units outright than what I've got. Yeah, Chosen do have the silver block. Oh, Chaos Warriors also have silver block chance. Should have been firing at the freaking Chosen. But all of these sort of units are just miles ahead better than my units here. Chaos Warriors maybe not so much, but they're worth a lot more points. 800 or so, I think, for these guys. It's enough that you feel like you're going to get outclassed pretty badly. So we're getting a lot of these arrow hits in, and the Starshaft arrows are a great way to deal lots of damage to Chaos units. You can even see some of the overshots hitting these aspiring champions, and that's dealing some good damage. But you do need to protect these guys somehow. One way is to simply kite back with them, but when you're up against a faction that does have good amounts of melee cavalry, like Chaos does with the Chaos Warhounds and their Chaos Knights and stuff like that, you're going to have a harder time protecting them simply by kiting back and using your own cavalry as sort of counter. So you can see that that lovely net has afforded us a few more shots, but that's still not really enough. That's only stopping them in a couple of places there. You can see the shots from the Glade Lord hitting these guys pretty hard and actually knocking a couple of them out of the unit. But here we go, we see first contact between our relatively inexpensive 2 Chevron Eternal Guard with shields. Now, the point of these guys is that they'll last out the fight, they'll be able to whittle these guys down, deal some good damage over time. My opponent's casting Cascading Fire Cloak, and that's going to make it so that this battle turns really far against me. But we're spaghetti lines, kind of. My opponent's also spaghetti lines, so he's only really affecting 1 or 2 units with that. You can see that these Chaos Warriors over here charging in as well. They're going to have a slightly harder time just because they're not getting the effects of that Cascading Fire Cloak. Going to get some missiles in against these Marauder Horsemen. I should have been firing at the Chaos Knights, but they're kind of covered a little bit better. Actually managing to miss that shot there, interesting enough. Wild Riders are going to be able to help protect over there, so we're going to be able to get some more attackers in here. It is going to take you a lot to take down Chosen. Chosen are just one of those really tough to kill units. You can see the effects of them against this Eternal Guard. This unit of Eternal Guard is not doing any damage whatsoever to these Chosen here. Getting a Melkoth's Mystifying Aura on them, and that's going to chop down their health really fast, actually, but you can see that the spears themselves are not doing necessarily that great. You are getting a couple kills here and there, and the fact that we're double teaming them is helping, but despite the fact that this is a very lopsided combat, these Eternal Guard are holding their morale pretty well. They're at 33 still, which is pretty freaking high. Archaon coming in to assist his buddies there. He's chosen with Cascading Fire Cloak. Like, they're just not going to go anywhere. It's a unit that's just not going to die. Archaon getting chipped at by these arrows. He's held in place by these armor-piercing anti-large units. He is taking some damage from them as well, so that combination is going to be able to poke and prod at him quite badly. You can see just all across the line, my units are doing pretty well, despite the fact that they're much cheaper than what my opponent is fielding. These guys over here need to get in the fight a little bit more. They're kind of poking in at the corners there and doing kind of a good job there. But yeah, I should probably be collapsing in on these guys a little bit sooner. Over here, you can see that we don't really have any of those guys back there, so we're not going to focus on that. Over here, my opponent can swing a fight in his favor. This Chaos Warriors were getting absolutely crushed, but the Exalted Hero, of course, is going to swing that quite a bit in his favor. But even there, they're able to deal quite a bit of damage to him thanks to being armor-piercing and being able to get that bonus versus large. So their pokes and prods are actually dealing him quite a bit of damage. These Chaos Warriors over here, though, now being assisted by these Chosen, gonna be a real hard nut to crack as they sort of move into these guys. But down to 15 men, they're still in the fight. They're not broken. That's actually one of the real good strengths of these guys, the fact that they have to go down to basically the last guy before they'll run out of combat. Very effective sort of way of dealing with things. So at this point in time, like, my opponent is breaking through my lines, but it's taken him so long that a lot of my support elements are just sort of in their element. They've really taken the time to deal tons of damage to a lot of his different units. He's fighting against this Waystalker with his Chosen, which is a bit of a waste for Chosen, because they will... It's kind of overkill. Also lets us get some good shots, just firing that into the middle of this with our General. They're able to deal lots of damage to those Chosen. But yeah, across the line though, the Eternal Guard, despite the fact that they've lasted a long time, despite the Flaming Sword of Ruin, despite the Cascading Fire Cloak, are finally getting whittled down to nothing. But it took them so long and it cost them so much of their support units that they're out of cavalry. They've got their generals still, of course, but we've still got archers. We're still pouring fire into him from a couple of places, and without his cavalry, he's going to have a harder time dealing with that. We've still got our mage casting Melkoth's Mystifying Aura all over the place, because I do love that spell. I do think it's an amazing spell. And we're able to sort of charge into Archaon over here with a bunch of different units here. We're still firing at him with our Lord. This would have been a better place to have had more Eternal Guard rather than these Wild Riders, of course, against Archaon. He's a little bit tough to beat with those sorts of units, but such is life sometimes. Sometimes don't have the right tools for the job, and they're doing an okay job as well. It's just I really would have preferred having another fresh unit of the right thing. Getting some good shots against those Marauder Horse Masters and chasing them away with the remnants of these Eternal Guard, and you can see that with like 9 in the unit, 14 left in the unit, with very little left, these guys are willing to come back into the fight, which is not as much as you could say for a lot of other types of units. 21 Eternal Guard in this unit fighting Chosen. They're getting completely wrecked, and yet they're still willing to stay in the fight. They're tired. They're still dealing some good damage. These Chosen are still actually getting whittled in terms of hit points by just a tiny bit. Actually, their hit points are rock solid, but, you know, what have you. Archaon is actually a much tougher beast than I gave him credit for, I think. Yeah, these guys haven't actually taken any damage, but we're down to 10 Eternal Guard. Very little hit points left, very tired. And yet, despite that, down to 9, they're still in the fight. They're still willing to keep holding that line, keeping this unit locked in place, stopping him from getting to where he needs to go, stopping him from getting to where he wants to go, giving me time to deal with these Forsaken instead of him, instead of them. You can see that they're getting absolutely plastered thanks to that spell keeping them in place there. My general fighting his general, mine's just got that potion left, and like there's enough of a difference in hit points at this point in time that I can probably finish off Archaon with my Glade Lord. I think he's armor piercing. No, he's not actually. So yeah, he is actually much tougher regardless, but it's still one of those cases. Here comes some Eternal Guard. This is one of those situations where it's nice to be able to bring them in. You know, when they're at extremely low health or extremely low morale, still able to contribute to the fight here against that Marauder unit. Here come the Chosen finally. Archaon still in the fight, so like these tiny remnants are things that you need to be able to bring together in a fight like this. You got only 9 men here. They're charging into Chosen along with this other unit of a 13 Eternal Guard. Being able to charge in, pile in on these Chosen here, deal some damage. They've taken another about 100 hit points worth of damage since we last checked on them, and it's definitely enough to do something to them. It's definitely enough to start bringing them out of this fight here. They've taken another 50 points of damage. So, I mean, every little bit counts, and these guys certainly are able to apply that in there without necessarily getting knocked out of the fight when they should. So I think these guys, just in terms of what they are, what they represent, and what they can do, are absolutely a brilliant unit that works really well with the Wood Elf army. And of course you can sort of use them, I've played them against dwarves and have used just them as a sort of type of unit. Works surprisingly well. They're just a solid all-around unit that will last it out. They've got more ability to fight to the death than you would ever give them a right to for their points cost. And the number of units that they're effective against is just massive. They're going to be able to work against most units in the game with relative cost efficiency, and the only ones that aren't are the ones that people will probably be taking against, will not be taking against Wood Elves, because if you take the sort of things that are good against Eternal Guard, you risk losing outright to just a small number of Treekin, which is something that can tend to happen. So, you know, if you took like a whole ton of Marauders or something like that, Marauders are a bad example because they're a bad unit, but if you took a whole bunch of Goblins with good upgrades and stuff like that, you're likely to lose if they take Treekin, and so it's sort of catch-22 when you're up against Wood Elves, because you do need to take some of those units, like, say, Orc Biggins or something like that. Eternal Guard would do pretty okay against those guys. They're not too cheap, they come in smaller unit sizes, and while the bonuses for Eternal Guard don't really apply against them, they still have that high melee defense, which is going to hold them in place and let you sort of pound them with arrows for a very long time. I think they're a great unit, and I think they're going to be the mainstay of a lot of Wood Elf army lists for the time being, until maybe something changes. I'm still thinking that the Wood Elf should have a more skirmishing style, because they right now can play a kind of conventional main line sort of style with archers as a support. But we'll see how things go and how the game evolves from here. So anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you guys all next time.